All right, welcome in everybody to another edition of the Fast Break. I am Casey Johnson. We're on episode 10, if you can believe it. And I'm coming to you remotely for the first time. We are in Salt Lake City as the Bulls continue their long 6-game trip. Number one, Coby White. Man, is he on a heater. 8 straight games of 20 points or more. That's a career-long streak. A 44-point night in Orlando. It's a big reason why Coby White is your reigning Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Now, Coby does not like talking about individual statistics. He always tells me that I jinx him when I bring these things up, but there's no getting around the way that he is playing. He is playing at such a high level. Can he keep that up, particularly as he continues to be number one on the opponent's scouting reports? That's up to Coby. We will see. But what's most impressive to me about this stretch is we've seen Coby White get hot from three-point range before. He's doing this current stretch without doing much damage from the three-point line. In fact, he's making less than 3 3-pointers per game in this stretch. What is he doing? He's getting to the line. He's averaging over 5.6 attempts from the free throw line per game in this stretch. And look at this. He's shooting 93.3% from the line. Coby is attacking and scoring at all 3 levels. In fact, Indiana Pacers coach Rick Carlisle noted that very difference when the Bulls played the Pacers at the United Center last week. He talked about Coby White's evolution as a 3-level scorer. Obviously, he came into the league more known as a 3-point shooter. He's really evolved his game, and his finishing ability and ability to get to the rim and draw contact is what is defining this hot scoring streak to me. Then off the court, I've said it on this feature, or at least the video mailbag before, to me, Coby White has become the heart and soul of this team. He's obviously the last remaining member from the roster that this current managerial regime inherited. And with Zach LaVine in Sacramento, Coby's the longest tenured Bull, and he wears that mantle proudly. He understands what it takes to be a leader. He's using his voice more. So a lot to like from Coby White, and we'll see if that continues on this 6-game trip. All right, number 2, Kevin Huerter. Now, he only scored 9 points in Houston. That snapped a streak of 8 straight games in double figures for the marksman. But look, in 13 games for the Bulls, he's averaging 11.5 points, and he's shooting 33.3% from three-point range on 7.4 attempts per game. It's well documented that he was struggling from three-point range before his trade from Sacramento, connecting at just 30.2% in a Kings uniform this season. Now, he's got a ways to go to reach his career percentage of 37.4%. But what I've liked from Kevin Huerter, particularly in this stretch, is he's not just a three-point shooter. He's actually creating offense with his ability to cut in half-court settings. He runs the floor hard in transition. He's a very quick decision maker. He moves the ball well. He screens well. He gets the ball going from side to side. So he's not just a spot-up three-point shooter. To me, Kevin Huerter's offensive game is pretty well-rounded. And also, he's a very responsible rebounder for his position. So a lot to like from Kevin Huerter in this stretch. Obviously, his return on Thursday night in Sacramento will be a storyline, particularly with some comments when he first got traded to the Bulls that did not sit particularly well with a very rabid fan base in Sacramento, where he talked about the offense becoming predictable and stagnant, and that contributed to his struggles from three-point range. Obviously, he's much more embraced this Bulls offensive style in which they swing the ball side to side. They play fast, take a lot of threes. So we'll see what kind of reaction Kevin Huerter gets Thursday night in Sacramento. I talked to him actually about that at the morning shoot around here in Salt Lake City today, Monday, and he's intrigued as well. He's curious to see what kind of reception he's going to get as well. But Kevin Huerter has been playing at a high level and in the starting lineup, obviously, too, with these injuries that the Bulls have had of late. So we'll see how his stretch continues. All right, storyline number 3. It is quite the week for opponents. Let's see, you got, obviously, Lauri Markkanen Monday night in Salt Lake City. On Wednesday, Tre Jones sees his older brother in Phoenix. On Thursday, not only does Kevin Huerter return to Sacramento, but the Bulls see their familiar faces in DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine for the first time since the Bulls traded him in February. And then obviously it rolls on in Los Angeles late in the week. Is anybody used to seeing Luka Doncic in a Lakers uniform? I am not. So let's break it down. Lauri is down a little bit from his heights as an All-NBA, All-Star player. He's averaging 19 points per game this season. That's down from that career high 25.6 points per game he posted a couple seasons ago. Lauri faces old teams, a little bit old hat, but it's still always fun to see what might have been. I maintain he probably would not have reached these heights in Chicago. He needed a fresh start and a change of scenery. And kudos to him for still shooting the three ball at a very high clip. He's at 35%, which is a little bit down, but he's taken a career high 8.5 attempts per game. So it's bombs away for Lauri Markkanen in Utah. As for Zach LaVine, the Kings, it's hard for me to still call him a king, given how long I covered him in Chicago. The Kings are 8-9 since Zach LaVine came over via trade. That includes a 4-game skid, entering a season-high 7-game homestand that starts tonight. We're taping this on Monday. The Bulls roll into town on Thursday. I've talked to Zach privately and briefly, that I reported on a game broadcast one time about his change of scenery in Sacramento, obviously much closer to his home, not only for his parents to come down from Seattle, but also his home in California for his family. So the transition's been pretty smooth. He actually had a game-winning shot attempt at the end of regulation against the Clippers, just rim out on a game they ended up losing in overtime on Kawhi Leonard's buzzer beater. So some frustration for Zach at times, but overall, man, is he continuing that ridiculous shooting season he was having here in Chicago. He's averaging 22.7 points per game on 52.2% shooting. That includes 42.9% from three-point range on 7 attempts per game with the Kings. And here's the big difference. He's up that free throw percentage. He was struggling a little bit from the line earlier this season for the Bulls, which is atypical for Zach. He's shooting 90.2% from the free throw line for the Kings. So obviously he's fixed those issues. And Thursday night's going to be a really fun and emotional game. I mean, we've already had DeMar DeRozan come back to the United Center as a member of the Kings, but to see Zach LaVine, face his former franchise for the first time since the trade will be emotional. He's obviously got a lot of love for Coby White and many other people within the organization. And I know that the Bulls feel very highly and value Zach LaVine as well. So Thursday's going to be a fun night in Sacramento. And then obviously later in the week, Saturday, the Bulls roll into the Lakers. LeBron James may or may not play. He's been battling a groin strain. If he's out, regardless, Luka Doncic will be scheduled to play. And as I mentioned before, it's still hard to wrap your brain around him being in a Lakers uniform. Man, I was watching a little bit of that game on Sunday. And every time he comes on the screen, I'm like, oh, yeah, Luka Doncic is on the Lakers. It is just wild. All right, storyline number 4. This road trip, man, this is an old school road trip. For those young Bulls fans out there, I'm going to educate a little something about what used to be called the circus trip. This is a season high 6-game road trip, and it makes me think of those days of the circus trip, which was named because the circus, yes, the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey circus used to come into the United Center every fall and displace the Bulls for multiple games. And why was this such a big storyline? Well, it happened for years, including in the Dynasty days. I covered many, many circus trips. But there's one in particular that stands out, and it's pretty wild that we're in Utah as we're taping this edition of the Fast Break, because on November 24th, 2004, and yes, either sadly or amazingly, I covered that game for the Chicago Tribune, the Bulls snapped a 37-game losing streak on the circus trip. That's right, 37 straight losses from the end of the dynasty through the rebuilding years until November 24th, 2004, a 101-99 victory over the Utah Jazz. Ben Gordon came off the bench with 22 points. Eddie Curry came off the bench. He had been starting with 21 points. Kirk Hinrich, Captain Kirk, the stalwart, 17 points and 8 assists. And why is this game so memorable? Not only did it snap that ridiculous 37-game losing streak on the circus trip. The Bulls had started that season 0-9. One more loss, they would have tied the franchise record for worst start in franchise history at 0-10. In fact, here's a little peek behind the curtain journalism story. We had a story ready to go for the Chicago Tribune, 81, which means page one of the entire newspaper, not page one of sports, about the futility of the Bulls rebuild and the 0-10 start, tying the franchise record for worst start in franchise history. The Bulls furiously came back in that game. We killed the story. I instead wrote a glorious comeback victory that snapped that 37-game losing streak and the 0-9 start. And what happened the rest of that season? Oh, the Bulls only went on to finish 47-35 after an 0-9 start and make the playoffs under 𝗬𝗏 for the first time since the dynasty ended. So a lot of memories about those circus trips, particularly here in Utah. And this 6-game trip kind of reminds me of those circus trips. This is a season-high 6-game trip. The Bulls, as of this taping, are 0-1 after that tough loss in Houston, in which they played well. It's obviously a tough trip, not only for opponents, but just for the length of it. There is only that one back-to-back, Phoenix to Sacramento. So the Bulls will have off days in between. And you hear the typical cliches from players about bonding and time on the road together. It's less about that. It's more about just obviously trying to stay at a high level and close that gap from that 10th seed to the 9th seed. Miami is cooperating in the play-in race. They are skidding to the finish line. So if the Bulls can bring that same effort that they showed in Houston, we'll see what they have tonight in Salt Lake City. This could be a successful road trip. All right, that's going to do it for yet another edition of the Fast Break. As always, we appreciate you checking us out. Thanks for the remote aspect of this one, and we will catch you next week when we get back.